Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, the why, what, and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the daily edition of The Hindu newspaper dated 24th May 2018. So let's start. There is an article on page number 8 which reads Natural Capital in the 21st Century. The article further says India must calculate its green GDP to factor in the value of environment in its growth. This topic will fall under the General Studies paper 3 under the section Environmental Pollution and Degradation. The focus of this article is that for a developing nation like India, focus on GDP growth without taking into account widespread degradation of environment can be disastrous. The author further says that due to this environmental degradation, within a century, our food production could see a loss of 10 to 40%. Also, according to a World Bank report, India suffered a cost of $550 billion, which is about 8.5% of GDP due to air pollution. The author further says that if we include the cost of externalities such as water pollution and land degradation along with air pollution, the losses suffered would be much higher than what has been calculated by the World Bank. Thus, the author says that along with GDP growth, we should also consider the decline in natural capital in our national accounts. So, under this article, we will try to understand certain key terms. For example, what is natural capital and why is it important? Further, we will understand what are externalities and the difficulty in calculating the natural capital in economic terms. And finally, we will understand why is it important for India to factor in the value of environment in GDP growth calculations. Now, the natural capital can be defined as the world's stocks of natural assets, which include geology, soil, air, water, and all living things. This natural capital is important because humans derive a wide range of services from this natural capital. For example, food, water, fuel, etc. And these services that are provided by this natural capital are called as the ecosystem services. Now let us understand why is this natural capital important. Under economics, we understand that with financial capital, when we spend too much, we run the risk of debt, and which, if left unchecked, can eventually result in bankruptcy, like what is happening in the Indian banking sector. Similarly, if we keep drawing down stocks of natural capital without allowing or encouraging the nature to recover, we run the risk of local, regional, or even the global ecosystem collapse. Ultimately, this makes it more difficult for human communities to sustain themselves, particularly in already stressed ecosystems, potentially leading to starvation, conflict over resource scarcity, and displacement of population. A prominent example in this case is of Sudan, where the decline in rainfall due to climate change has led to socio-economic decline and local ethnic conflicts due to resource crunch. So we have learned that natural capital is the world's stocks of natural assets, and these natural assets provide us various ecosystem services. Further, natural capital is important because stressed ecosystems can lead to starvation, conflict over resource scarcity, and displacement of population. A prominent example that we discussed is of Sudan. Now, let us understand what are externalities as mentioned in the article. So, simply, externalities are the positive or negative economic impact of consuming or producing a good on a third party who isn't connected to the good or service or the transaction. Those externalities are the positive or negative impact of any good or service exchange on third party other than the parties who are transacting in an economic activity. So in other words, they are the unforeseen consequences of economic activities. Now when the production or consumption of a good or service proves beneficial to a third party, then it is a positive externality. For example, a technology which helps in pollution control will have positive externalities. That is, it will be beneficial to the larger society, not just the party who is buying the pollution control devices. And conversely, when the production or consumption of a good or service is detrimental to a third party, then it is called as the negative externality. For example, pollution caused by industries is a negative externality. So, externalities are the unforeseen consequences of economic activities, and they can be positive. They can be positive if the production or consumption of a goods or service proves beneficial to the third party, and they can be negative if the production or consumption of goods or service is detrimental to the third parties. The author says that estimation of this natural capital is a challenge. Further explaining this challenge, the author says that natural capital can cover entire ecosystems such as fisheries, and forests. Besides other hidden overlooked services, for example, the regeneration of soil, nitrogen fixation, nutrient recycling, pollination, and the overall hydrological cycle. Thus, it becomes difficult to calculate the natural capital because of these hidden or the overlooked services. Further, when pollution happens, it is actually a depletion of our natural capital. As for example, acid rain damages forests and industrial seepage affects water quality. In a modern economy, the challenge is to estimate such depreciation to the natural capital. So, according to author, the challenge in the calculation of natural capital are the hidden or the overlooked services like the regeneration of soil and pollination and the depreciation to the natural capital due to the pollution. Further, the author explains the importance for India to factor in the negative externalities in its GDP counting. The author says that India has a GDP of $2.65 trillion in nominal terms, but it fails to take into account the negative externalities of such economic growth. He further explains that in India, high levels of air pollution imposes costs on local transport due to traffic, health, and livability in urban and rural areas because of air pollution and the polluted water. Further, he explains that when economic growth leads to destruction of forests, wetlands, and woodlands for agriculture, mining, or even urban expansion, it is typically the poorest of the traditional dwellers who suffer the most. So, it is important for India to factor in the negative externalities in GDP counting because of the economic costs of pollution and the impact it has on the poorest people. So, according to author, the way forward is that India should seek to publish green GDP figures that take into account the depreciation of natural capital stock due to economic exploitation and environmental degradation. Further, we need a greater push for empirical studies of the potential value of such ecosystem services. Also, adapting our national accounts in line with this framework will help in incorporating the value of environment in our growth and will help us to focus on developing a feasible transition to a green economy. So, the author says that India should seek to publish green GDP figures and also a greater push should be given to the empirical studies for the potential value of ecosystem services. And by incorporating the value of environment in our growth, we can have a feasible transition to a green economy. So, under this article, we have learned that what is natural capital and what is its importance. And we have also learned about the positive and the negative externalities. Further, we have learned that what are the challenges in estimation of natural capital. We have also learned why is it important for India to factor in the negative externalities in GDP counting. So this article will help us in writing answers in our mains examination related to the economic growth versus environmental sustainability issue. Previously in the year 2016, a question was asked in the preliminary examination. The question read, which of the following best describes or describe the aim of Green India mission of the Government of India? The first option was incorporating environmental benefits and costs into union and state budgets, thereby implementing the green accounting. Second, launching the green revolution to enhance agricultural output so as to ensure food security to one and all in the future. Third, restoring and enhancing forest cover and responding to climate change by a combination of adaptation and mitigation measures. So the first option is wrong because India has not started incorporating the environmental benefits and costs into its union and the state budgets. Second, Green India mission is not related to agriculture. So the second option is also wrong. So the correct option is the option 3. Thus the correct answer choice is C, only 3. With this, let us move on to the next article. There is an article on page number 8 which reads, do we need the office of the governor? The article further reads, to understand why we don't need a governor, it is important to understand its origin in the colonial regime. Thus, the article throws light on the evolution of the office of governor. This topic falls under the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination, under the subtopic Functions and Responsibilities of Various Constitutional Bodies, and also under the Issues and Challenges Pertaining to the Federal Structure. The article is in news because after the Karnataka Assembly elections, the constitutional role of governor has gained significance. The question that is being asked in public domain is whether the discretion bestowed to the office of governor is justified in the present scenario or not. To have a clearer picture, the article tries to understand the historical origins of governor in the colonial times. Now let us understand the origin of office of governor in the colonial times. So through the course of early 20th century, Due to the demand created by the Indian nationalist movement, gradual and incremental reforms towards a responsible government were provided by the British rulers. These reforms culminated in the Government of India Act 1935. This act established the provincial legislative assemblies elected from a limited franchise. However, despite the formation of provincial legislative assemblies based on elections, the British retained the office of governor and gave him special responsibilities which allowed certain discretion to the governor. Further, the Constitution of India retained the powers of governor because of these considerations. First, there was a dearth of competent legislators in the states. That is, in the newly elected state assemblies, there was lack or scarcity of competent legislators. That is why the office of governor was required to provide them guidance. Further, it was assumed that a certain amount of centralization of power was necessary. This power was necessary to avoid the disintegration of provinces. The fear of disintegration was because India comprised of provinces as well as princely states, and some of them were not in favor of becoming a part of the union. For example, the Junagadh and the Hyderabad state. Further, in the Constituent Assembly debates, some concerned members raised the issue of discretionary power of the governor. However, they were assured that the governor would remain only a constitutional post and would have no power to interfere in the day to day administration of the state. Thus, the discretionary power of governor was retained in our constitution because of the lack of competent legislators in the newly elected state assemblies and also to provide a certain amount of centralization of power which was necessary to avoid the disintegration of provinces. For example, Junagadh and Hyderabad. Further, in the Constituent Assembly debates, it was provided that governor would remain only a constitutional post and would have no power to interfere with the day-to-day administration. Thus, according to author, the constitution makers were committed to the concept of federalism, but they also feared secession or the disintegration of provinces. Thus, they opted for a controlled federalism where the role and responsibilities of governor became significant. According to author, the office of governor represented one such choke point in the constitution where federalism and the popular will were to be kept in check if situation demanded. And to keep such situations under control, the governor was provided with discretionary powers. So the author says that the circumstances have changed 70 years after the independence and there is a need to revisit the powers of the office of governor. The author says that the idea of governor standing as a bulwark against secessionism or disintegration and providing legislative expertise to the states are no longer valid justifications. Further, in the present day multi party democracy, it is better to lay down strict guidelines and rules regarding government formation in case of a hung verdict. This will not allow the central government to tinker with the constitutional responsibilities of the governor. Now, in the year 2015, a question was asked. The concept of cooperative federalism has been increasingly emphasized in the recent years. Highlight the drawbacks in the existing structure and the extent to which cooperative federalism would answer the shortcomings. So, we can use the content of this article in highlighting the drawbacks in the existing structure. In the year 2014, in the preliminary examination, a question was asked on the discretionary powers of the governor of a state. So the question read, which of the following are the discretionary powers given to the governor of a state? First, sending a report to the President of India for imposing the President rule. This option is correct. Second, appointing the ministers. This option is incorrect because the governor appoints the chief minister who in turn appoints the ministers. So the governor does not directly appoint the ministers. Third is reserving certain bills passed by the state legislature for the consideration of President of India. This option is correct. Finally, making the rules to conduct the business of the state government. This option is incorrect because this is the executive power of the governor and not the discretionary power of the governor. So the correct answer is 1 and 3, that is B. With this, let us move on to the next article. There is an article on page number 13 which reads, India moves WTO over US steel tariffs. The article further reads, Trump administration imposed 25% levy on steel imports and 10% on aluminium imports. So this article falls under the General Studies paper 3 under the Indian economy and issues relating to growth. Further, under paper 2, it falls under the important international institutions. Now this article is in news because the US has imposed import duty on steel and aluminium from other countries. This decision is likely to affect India's exports to the US. Now we will understand the impact of this decision. This decision is being seen as an act of protectionism and is likely to have an adverse impact on the global trade. Further, this decision is not in compliance with the global trade norms as provided by the WTO. Further, it will have an adverse impact on India's steel exports. Now, exports are important for India to maintain a healthy current account balance, and these exports also provide important foreign exchange to India. The step taken by India against the imposition of these import tariffs is that India has lodged a complaint with WTO's dispute redressal mechanism. So till now we have learned that the imposition of import tariff on steel and aluminium by United States is being seen as an act of protectionism and it is likely to have an adverse impact on global trade. Further, it is not in compliance with the global trade norms. Also, it is likely to have an adverse impact on India's steel exports. Also, India has lodged a complaint in the WTO's dispute redressal mechanism. Now, let us understand how WTO's dispute resolution mechanism works. The resolving of trade disputes is one of the core activities of WTO. A dispute is said to have arisen when a member government believes that another member government is violating an agreement or a commitment that it has made in the WTO. Further, the WTO members have agreed that when they judge that other members have broken trade rules, they shall refer the matter to the dispute settlement mechanism rather than adopting unilateral measures. In this case, for example, India is not taking any action against United States unilaterally and is moving towards the dispute settlement mechanism. And finally, the dispute settlement procedure of WTO is governed by the understanding on rules and procedures governing the settlement of disputes. This is known as DSU. So we have learned that resolving trade disputes is one of the core activities of WTO. Dispute arises when a member country violates an agreement or commitment that it had made in the WTO. And finally, the countries do not take unilateral measures and they move to the dispute settlement mechanism. In the year 2013, in the mains examination, a question was asked: Food Security Bill is expected to eliminate hunger and malnutrition in India. Critically discuss various apprehensions in its effective implementation along with the concerns it has generated in WTO. So this question was related to WTO. That is why WTO forms an important aspect of the syllabus. Further, in the year 2015, a question was asked which read: the terms agreement on agriculture, agreement on the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and peace clause appear in the news frequently in the context of the affairs of. So the correct answer to this question is C, the World Trade Organization. With this, let us move on to the next article. There is an article on page number 9 which reads Justice and Redemption. The article further reads: when a child faces brutality in or outside the family, the society's contract with its own spirit is violated. This topic can be understood from the General Studies Paper 4 perspective, that is, ethics. It will fall under the topic Strengthening of Ethical and Moral Values in Governance. Now, the focus of the article is to explore the meaning of justice and redemption for children who face brutality in the form of sexual violence. The article also explores the crippling of the moral fabric of our society due to increasing number of cases of child rape in India. The author says that sexual assault in early childhood is a heinous crime and the psychological impact left on children is irreparable. So the author says that justice for such children refers to public identification of the accused, followed by adequate quantum of punishment granted by the court of law. The author further explains the purpose of the justice. He says that the concept of justice is based upon and is equated with moral rightness, rationality, fairness, righteousness, equality, goodness, and equity. In India, it is the duty of courts to administer justice based on facts and reason. He further says that when a crime is committed, then justice is said to be served when the perpetrators and those involved in such crimes are recognized and punished as per the law. So he says that the purpose of justice is twofold. First, it carries with itself the value of deterrence. Deterrence means the quantum of punishment should be such that it discourages others from committing such a heinous crime. Second, the recognition of child's right to justice. That is, the child who is victim of the sexual assault has a right to justice. Further, the author reflects upon the role of the society in such cases. The author says that it is the moral responsibility of society to prevent brutality and atrocities on children. Further, he says that when a child encounters violence, the protective fabric of the society is torn apart or shredded, and it is very difficult to redeem or compensate by the society at large for such faults committed on children. Thus, the author says that it is the moral responsibility of society to protect its children, and if it fails to do so, it shows that the protective fabric of the society has broken. The author further explains the meaning of redemption. He says that redemption is a concept borrowed from ethics. He says that one of the meaning of redemption is the recovery of something damaged as a result of neglect or bad intention. This meaning is specific to the kind of crime we are witnessing today, that is, rape of the girl child. And the second meaning of redemption is to fulfill a pledge. The author summarizes the article by saying that the issue of rape of children reflects the moral degradation of the society and loss of self awareness among the members of society. He further says that the concept of deterrence alone is not enough to put an end to such brutal crimes. And finally, he suggests that the role of state to provide a safer environment to our children becomes extremely significant in such circumstances. So the key takeaways of this article are that the cases of child sex abuse are increasing in the society. These instances of crime are heinous in nature and they have an irreparable psychological impact on the victims. Further, the article explains that what justice would mean to the victims and what is the purpose of this justice. What is the role of society in cases of child sex abuse and why the role of state becomes important in such circumstances. With this, let us move on to the next article. There is an article on page number 3 which reads, Mobile app to be launched for advanced lightning warning. This article will fall under the General Studies paper 3 of the mains examination under the topic Disaster Management. We will understand an important step taken by the Odisha government in managing this disaster. The news article says that the Odisha government has decided to introduce a special mobile application to provide advance information on lightning, which has claimed at least 61 lives between April and May. The impact of this step will be that information on lightning will be available on smartphones, which will help people move to safer places and save their lives. The information on the mobile application will be available an hour before the lightning. The Odisha government has further decided to collaborate with US based Earth Network to install a lightning detection system in the state. Now, this step is crucial because lightning has become a major disaster in the Odisha. Lightning claims around 400 lives every year. So, the Odisha government is launching a mobile app which will provide advanced information on the lightning. It will help people move to safer places. It will be available an hour before the lightning. The agencies involved are the Odisha government and the US based Earth Network. This step is crucial because lightning has become a major disaster in Odisha and it claims around 400 lives every year. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Subscribe and press bell icon to watch other DNS videos. Now let us move on to the question for the day.